Good morning. It's Monday. I'm glad to see you today. All right, let's get into what we're going to do today. Today, we are going to do our daily holidays, of course, and then we will open the magic. It's a book that I told you I would share with you on Friday. Then we're going to go a little bit of vocabulary before we jump into the Rome stuff for today. So today you'll see that we're going to do a Rome myth. So on Friday we did some what was like life like if you had been a plebeian. Remember, patricians were up here, then plebeians, then slaves. And so in the middle were the plebeians. So what would life have been like if you had been part of the plebeian class growing up in Rome? So today is going to be a little bit about the myths that they made up with their gods and goddesses to explain things. And it works out perfectly because it has to do with the holiday, the big time holiday that there's lots of decorations for this month. And it's the story is about Cupid and Psyche. So let's jump into our holidays. Today is February 8th. Yesterday was the Super Bowl, but since I'm pre recording this, the Super Bowl hasn't happened yet, so I don't know the outcome. But if you're watching this, you probably do. And if you don't know it, you can Google it to find out. So, were you a Chiefs fan, a Buccaneers fan, or is football just not your thing? That's okay if it isn't. But today's holiday is Oatmeal Day. February 8th is Oatmeal Day. Some people like oatmeal plain. Some people like to add berries in it. At my house, we like to add peanut butter or chocolate chips or bananas or all three. And it is really, really good. It's very sweet. It almost tastes like a dessert or one of those no bake cookies. Let's open the magic. So, I have promised to read to you a story today, and we are doing Black History Month. That's something that's celebrated across our country in February. And the book I'm going to share with you today is called Whoosh. And the genre of this book is a biography. Biography has a couple of different parts. The bio in biography means life. Here's the real guy, Lonnie Anderson. And graph in that word. Anytime you see graph inside of a word, it means to write. And sometimes when we graph things, we're not doing a lot of writing, we're representing. So to write or to represent about someone's life. So that means that this is a true story about somebody's life. It happens to be this guy, Lonnie Anderson. He has a really incredible story and background, but he invented the super soaker. So if you've ever played with a water gun, it's all because of this guy. So it's going to be really neat to learn about him. So let's jump into his story. His story is actually on Epic. Now, I have the actual book, but I wanted to show it to you this way so you could enjoy it again if you wanted to on Epic's website. You can go to Epic anytime. If you go to our agenda and go to the last slide, it has the code so that you can get on Epic. I've already put you on there. You just have to use the code so it will let you in. And I think it will let you read books from 8 to 4 o'clock every day. After 4 o'clock, it shuts off for some reason. But the good thing is you're not in class all day, so you can go and enjoy books. They're not just made up random books just for this website. They are real books that you can buy in a bookstore, on Amazon, check out from a library. So this is one of them. So this is a true story, a biography, a writing about somebody else's life that is true. Bamboo shooters, rubber band guns, erector set, go-kart engine, bolts and screws, and other spare parts his dad let him bring in from the shed, and various other things he'd hauled from the junkyard. Lonnie loved building and creating. Ideas for inventions just kept flowing. He learned how to make rockets from scratch. Kids at school gathered to watch Lonnie launch them, and he learned how to make rocket fuel. When it caught fire in the kitchen, Lonnie's mom didn't make him stop. She just sent him outside to work. Lonnie wanted to spend his life designing things, building things, and getting them to work. He wanted to be an engineer. However, Lonnie took an exam that said he would not make a very good one. His dream had been challenged. Lonnie was discouraged. But he knew that whoever graded his test hadn't met Linux. Inspired by a TV show, Lonnie had built his own robot. He made it out of scrap metal and named it Linux. Compressed air cylinders and valves allowed Linux's body to turn and its arms to move. The switches came from an old broken jukebox. Lana used a tape recorder to program Linux, and as a bonus, the reels looked like eyes. Have you ever seen a tape recorder or a tape? This was before downloading music and then before CDs. Ask your parents or your grandparents about tapes. Lonnie wanted to enter his creation in a science fair, but he couldn't get the transmitter to work. Without it, Lonnie couldn't send commands to Linux. Science fairs came and went. Lonnie missed one and then another until he got an idea. Now, Lonnie may or may not have asked before he borrowed his little sister's walkie talkie, but it fixed the transmission issue. His school's team took freshly fixed Linux to a 1968 fair at the University of Alabama, where only 5 years earlier, African American students hadn't even been allowed. Having to compete in a place that still wasn't very welcoming, now that was a challenge with a capital C. Against other schools from all over the state, Lonnie's team won first place. Soon Lonnie left home to go to college at Tuskegee Institute, where he stood out as a self-confident, insightful, creative thinker. He stood out as a student who asked the right questions, precisely defined problems, and formulated solutions. And he stood out as the guy who built his own booming sound system out of cast-off electronics. It even had lights that flashed in sync with the beat. Lonnie sometimes studied right in the middle of his own parties. The extra studying paid off. He became an engineer after graduation that took him beyond Alabama, way beyond. When NASA was sending an orbiter and probe called Galileo to Jupiter, the space agency needed to ensure a constant supply of power to the orbiter's computer memory. The engineer who had to figure out how to do it was Lonnie. His challenge was to come up with a lightweight backup system able to keep essential functions going in case the main power was lost. It wasn't easy, it wasn't obvious, but Lonnie found a solution. So, pause. You can tell that he got a job working at NASA. Remember when we read about counting on Catherine, we read about Katherine Johnson who helped the rockets get to the moon? So this is a little bit later in history, and Lonnie Johnson is working for NASA. So we've read about two people who were real who worked for NASA. Some at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory doubted his idea would work. Lonnie convinced them it would. He was right. As it photographed Jupiter and its moons, Galileo was supported by the power package that Lonnie designed. Much of what we know about Jupiter could have been at risk in a power failure, if not for Lonnie. Ideas for other problems to solve just kept on flowing. They flowed whether Lonnie was working with hundreds of people at NASA or up late tinkering with his own inventions in, finally, his own workshop. Lonnie knew the world's millions of refrigerators and air conditioners needed a new cooling system, one that didn't use R12, a chemical that was bad for the environment. He had an idea for using water and air pressure instead. To test his idea, he made a pump and nozzle, connected them to the bathroom faucet, turned on the faucet, turned on the pump, and then whoosh! The stream that blasted across the bathroom was so powerful, it created a curtain swirling breeze. It also gave Lonnie an idea for yet another invention. This, he thought, would make a great water gun. First, he had to find or make the parts, including a pump small enough for a child to handle. Then he had to glue the parts together into a prototype, an early version with room for improvement. Finally, Lonnie tested his strange-looking squirt gun at a picnic. "Does it really work?" a man asked. "Sure," Lonnie said. "Want to see?" Lonnie worked the pump, which squeezed air into a chamber. When he pulled the trigger, the air escaped, forcing water out with a whoosh. For a water battle to be a fair fight, there couldn't be just one of Lonnie's water guns. He needed help making more. So he went to a toy company after toy company after toy company. Look at all those no's he's getting. Is he giving up? Nope. The word no flowed again and again, but finally, one company said yes. It planned to make his water gun. Lonnie also had other projects: a water propelled toy airplane, two kinds of engines, and his cooling system. He found investors to provide the money for turning his ideas into products people could buy. He made a leap of faith, quit his day job, and devoted himself to full time inventing. So that means he quit working at NASA, where they were paying him, in hopes that some of his inventions would make him some money. But soon each plan fell apart, even the one for the water gun. These things sometimes happen, but when they happen, one after another to the same person, well, that's just some bad luck. Lonnie didn't have a job. He didn't have the money he'd been counting on. He and his family had to move out of their home and into a little apartment. He was angry and scared. But Lonnie had dealt with challenges all his life. He knew about a lot about solving problems, and he still believed in his inventions, especially the water gun. Lonnie went looking for another toy company. Do you remember when we read the book about Humpty Dumpty and he had fallen and he really wanted to do something, and so he decided to try? And it's amazing what happens when you decide to try and you don't give up. In 1989, he found a toy maker who was interested in seeing if the water gun, in seeing the water gun, if Lonnie ever happened to be in Philadelphia. But don't make a special trip, the guy said. Lonnie made a special trip. In his wife's suitcase, he carried a new prototype. He unpacked it, filled the tank with water, pumped the gun until the air pressure was good and high, and whoosh! Wow! Kids everywhere agreed that, wow, Lonnie's water gun, called the Super Soaker, became a smash hit. In no time, there were Super Soakers in backyards and on beaches, in parks, and on playgrounds. Each sale of a Super Soaker put a little money in Lonnie's pocket. All those hours, all those years that Lonnie spent in his workshop had paid off big time. Now he could afford to do just about anything he wanted. So, what did Lonnie do? He got a bigger workshop, which is where you'll find him today. Because facing challenges, solving problems, and building things are what Lonnie Johnson loves to do. And his ideas just keep on flowing. And then there's a note here that explains about how the Super Soaker works and a little bit about how this author came to write this story in the first place and how they even got to speak with Lonnie Johnson to learn some things. So I have seen some videos with Lonnie Johnson. He's still alive today. He's still inventing things. There's a really cool guy named Mark Rober who also used to work for NASA and makes really interesting inventions and does cool projects that he shows on YouTube. And one time he wanted to make an enormous, like the ultimate super soaker. And so he contacted Lonnie Johnson, and Lonnie was like, sure, I'll help you do it. So they worked together to build like the world's largest super soaker. And it was really neat to see Lonnie Johnson helping a fellow inventor use his invention, the super soaker, and make it ultimate. So you can read this book, Whoosh, again if you want to, on Epic. Plus, there are so many others. And man, do they have a ton of books for Black History Month celebrating so many Americans who have made a difference in our country. All right, so we're going to go further back in time. When he invented the water gun in 1989, your parents might have been living then, your grandparents for sure were, but we're going to go way back before any of them were living to the time of the Romans. And so let's skip through these things. You know that the Romans had all of these gods and goddesses that they had made up, and actually they borrowed them from the Greeks. They just renamed them. And it was to help them explain why things happened. Maybe it was everyday things that they saw or things that they experienced. And it was just a way to explain why, because they didn't know yet. And we also know that were they super creative and ingenious. Remember that word on Friday? Ingenious with aqueducts. You got to watch this cool video on Edpuzzle on Friday. And if you haven't watched it yet, you need to watch it. For one, it's an assignment. For two, super cool. And you can see why the word ingenious, which means very, very creative and like fits aqueducts. So you probably remember that basically they're just a really tall bridge built to carry water. So a tall, skinny bridge. And so here are some that the Romans built that are still standing today. And it's incredible, isn't it, that they could still be around today? It's also incredible that they were able to even build such a structure, considering they had no electricity. That means no running machines. They had to figure out how to hoist up really heavy stones up high and get them exactly where they needed to be. And before they even did that, they had to cut them precisely so they would be the right size, all with just very basic tools and a lot of people helping out. So it's pretty awesome. And you know that now these are all over Europe because the Romans controlled at one time so much land around the Mediterranean Sea. So these aqueducts are something really impressive. Import means to bring something in from another country to sell. So the United States imports a lot of goods, that means things, from other countries. If you pick up an item, you can typically turn it over, look at a label, and it will say made in China, made in Taiwan, made in Hong Kong. Those are some pretty popular places where we import goods. So that just means it came from another country to sell here. Import. Now, sometimes we send goods other places. So import means to bring in. They import our goods and we can sell other places too. Ingenious, there's that word again. Very clever, very creative. The aqueducts were very ingenious. Them figuring out how to build arches and columns with stone was very ingenious. Making concrete thousands of years ago that we still use today was very ingenious, very clever and creative. So when you see someone doing something that's just like, oh, wow, you can say, wow, what an ingenious creation or what an ingenious idea that they had. Like Lonnie Johnson. What an ingenious idea. And it was kind of by accident, but then he used it to make a really fun point. Saunter means to walk in a slow and relaxed way. Some other words you're going to see today also in relation to Cupid and Psyche. And you're like, who's that? You've probably heard of Cupid. What about Psyche? That might be a new name for you. All right, somebody in this story is going to be very eager, which means they want something, they're very interested in something. So the ooh, ooh, ooh. Or maybe you're eager to try something new, like especially if there are a fresh pan of brownies. I'm very eager to try one of those. You guys seem pretty eager to act out the Punic Wars on Friday if you joined the live. That was fun. Aid is to offer help. So you've probably heard of first aid or a first aid kit, and you know how that helps if you have some kind of an injury. The word aid just means offering help. So if you help someone out, you aid them. It doesn't even have to be if they're hurt. Like if someone's pencil falls on the floor and you pick it up for them, you have aided them. You've helped them. Oh, jealousy is a big part of this story with Cupid and Psyche. Remember, these characters are totally made up, but the Romans believed that they existed. So, unfortunately, you have probably been jealous at some point in your life of someone else or what they had or what they got to do or what they looked like. And it's just wanting what someone else has when you don't. Another word that would be a synonym that means the same thing would be envy. Envy is when you want something that someone else has. And as humans, it's just natural to be jealous and envious of other people sometimes. And you just have to get your brain in check and be like, wait, But let me think of all the things that I'm thankful for that are awesome in my life. Find the joy because you know it's there. You just have to look for it. So ambrosia is something that was made up. It's the something that the Greek gods drank. And here's why it's made up because it would make someone immortal. That means they would live forever. So this is in Roman mythology. A myth or mythology means completely made up. And the Greeks had this same thing because remember, these gods and goddesses also were created by the Greeks. So ambrosia is not a real drink. You cannot drink anything and you will live forever. It just doesn't happen. But since they came up with these stories that that gods and goddesses could give someone ambrosia and they would live forever, that creativeness has been used again in stories for hundreds of years because it's always interesting to think, oh, what if we drank this magical potion and we did live forever? Then what? I've seen it on movies, I've seen it in TV shows, and I've seen it in books. When you're a little bit older, you'll probably read a book called Tuck Everlasting. If you have an older brother or sister or cousin, see if they've read it. And it has to do with, they don't call it ambrosia in the story, but a what if you drank something and lived forever? So you're going to see ambrosia come up in this story with Cupid and Psyche. It's a myth, so it's completely made up. And prick, you've ever seen someone cook potatoes, especially in the microwave? They stab them with a fork to make little holes. Another word is means to prick. So it's when you're making a hole with something sharp. There's a story about a girl who pricks her finger and then falls asleep. Sleeping Beauty. Okay, you get to read chapter 6, Cupid and Psyche. You're going to find out who these characters are. And remember, the Greeks and the Romans made them up, they're not real. But it's interesting to see how creative they were and why they made up these characters to explain something. So you're going to go to the hub and you're going to go to the Roman Unit 4 box, and it looks just like your workbook. Then click in the top left, click on that little circle. That's the shortcut table of contents. Scroll down and go to chapter 6, Cupid and Psyche. Now you know that you can just read it with your eyes, but you can also click that speaker button and then it will read to you. And I love that because you can hear it. It will pronounce any of the words that you might have thought were tricky. And you get to hear a really good expression too. Plus, the words pop up in green as they're read, so it's easy to follow along. So, no matter what stage of a reader you are, I would recommend listening to it also. And then you can read and look at it as many times as you want to. Now, before you do, I want you to turn in your workbook to page 65. Here's what it looks like. Okay, you can see that right in the middle, there's a column with sentences. Before you read, I just want you to guess for each sentence. Do you think it will happen in the story or not? So just put yes or no. Read each sentence and be like, would that happen? I don't know. Maybe. It's just a guess. It's not a quiz. It's not for a grade. It's just for fun, just to see as you read if you were right or not. It's just for fun, but you still need to do it. So Venus is the name with the V. And you know it's a name because it's capitalized no matter where it is in the sentence. The one that starts with a P is Psyche. The P is silent. And then the other name that you'll see on there is Cupid. I'm guessing you've probably seen the word Cupid before, the name Cupid before, but Psyche might be one that's new. So Psyche is the one with the P. Psyche is Psyche. No P sound at all. So you're going to read the sentence in the middle column. Guess if you think it will happen or not. So put yes if you think it will happen. Put no if you think it won't happen. That's in the before reading column on the left. When you finish, you're going to go on the right-hand side and you're going to put yeses or nos, and you'll know this time if it really happened because you just read the story. Now, what do good readers do? They go back and look. You will have your workbook in front of you, and you'll have the hub pulled up on your computer, and you can look back and forth to see if it really happened or not if you can't remember. You don't have to memorize this. Go back and look. Reread it. Look at the pictures. Look at the captions that are underneath the pictures because you know captions are words that go with the picture. They're best friends to describe the picture. and then you'll be able to find out if it happened or not. Then on your classwork, there's a spot where you are going to be able to go in and click whether you put yes or no for each thing, and you can see if you were correct. So that's what you get to do today. So enjoy reading and listening and hearing Cupid and Psyche. Do your before column first. Make your guesses, yes, no, do you think it will happen or not? Then read the story on the hub. And then when you're finished, go on your chart again in your workbook and write down yes or no. And then you're going to go on your classwork and you're going to click on that form, yes or no, and you'll see how you did on it. Okay? I hope you have a great day. Remember, find the joy in your life because it is there. Find something positive about today that you are thankful for. And I will see you soon. Bye, guys. I love you.